Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, before we proceed with the reference of business, may I just be allowed to acknowledge some guests from the gallery, guests of Senator Nancy Binay and this representation, Representative Paul Dasa of the 1st District of Northern Samar is here with us. We'd like to acknowledge his presence. Also with us, Madam President, is the Mayor of Arayat, Pampanga, Mayor Maria Lourdes Alejandrino, and Vice Mayor Emmanuel Alejandrino. They're also here. Madam President, Lingayen Vice Mayor Dexter Malikdem is also here with us, with Councilor Jolo Lopez, Ms. Leslie Malikdem, and Ms. Luz Velasco. Guests of Senator Bato de la Rosa, Vice Governor Jose Gambito of Nueva Vizcaya and Cagayan Valley, Ms. Luz Gambito Baclig, Ms. Tina Baclig, and Mr. Kenneth Baclig. Guests of our Senate President Pro Tempore, Senator Loren Legarda, Dr. Ivan Henares, National Museum Director Jeremy Barnes, Komisyon ng Wikang Filipino Chairperson Arthur Casanova, National Historical Commission Architect Reynaldo Lita, National Commission for Culture and the Arts Executive Director Oscar Casaysay, and DFA Assistant Secretary Gonar Musor, Madam President. Last but not the least, the guest of our distinguished colleague, Senator J.V. Ejercito, Attorney Joey Inocencio, the IBP Bulacan President, with Attorney Nenita de la Cruz Tuazon of Bulacan, may kababayan, Madam President, Attorney Cecilia Gascon, the President of Bulsu, Mr. Bong Quinoga, and Ms. Laura Llanera.
Thank you, Majority Leader. The Philippine Senate welcomes our esteemed guests in the gallery today.
Thank you, Madam President. May I move that we proceed with the reference of business, Madam
Please
President.
proceed.
Third additional reference of business committee reports. Committee report number 24 by the Committee on Agriculture, Food and Agrarian Reform, Finance and Ways and Means on Senate number 1850 with Senators Escudero, Marcos, Lapid, Revilla Jr., Villanueva, De La Rosa, Villar C, and Angara as authors, an act emancipating agrarian reform beneficiaries from the debt burden arising from the agricultural lands under the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program and for other purposes. Recommending its approval in substitution of Senate numbers 55, 178, 922, 1112, 1179, 1405, 1476, 1660, 1661, 1662, and 1804. Taking into consideration House number 6336, sponsor Senator Villar C.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report 25 by the Committee on Agriculture, Food and Agrarian Reform on PS Resolution number 350 introduced by Senator Marcos. Resolution directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation into the soaring market prices of local onions, recommending the adoption of the recommendations contained therein and their immediate implementation. Sponsor Senator Villar C.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Fourth additional reference of business, resolutions. Proposal at resolution number 423, affirming the declaration by the National Historical Commission of the Philippines of certain portions of Santa Ana in the city of Manila as an important heritage zone and urging the local government concerned to help in preserving these areas thereof. Senator Legarda.
Referred to the Committees on Culture and the Arts and Local Government.
425, congratulating and commending Filipina actress Dolly Earnshaw de Leon on her international acclaim for her role in the Palme d'Or Triangle of Sadness, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
426, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry into the alleged irregularities in the operations of the PCSO, Senator Marcos.
Referred to the Committees on Accountability of Public Officers, Investigations, Games and Amusement.
427, congratulating and commending Filipino celebrity and dancer Billy Joe Ledesma Crawford for winning the grand prize of the 12th season of the French reality dance competition Dance avec les Stars, Senator Marcos.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
428, congratulating the Philippine esports team, Echo Esports, for the exceptional performance at the Mobile Legends Bang Bang M4 World Championship, Senator Villanueva.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
429, congratulating the 19 Filipino students who were awarded gold medals at the World International Mathematical Olympiad, Senator Villanueva.
Refer to the Committee on Rules.
430, recognizing and commending the Filipino math wizard for their impressive medal haul in the 2022 World International Mathematical Olympiad held on January 7 and 8, 2023 in Bangkok, Thailand, Senator Revilla Jr.
Refer to the Committee on Rules.
431, recognizing and honoring the heroism and bravery of Corporal Jerry R. Palacio, PA, for his selfless sacrifice of putting his life on the line during their conduct of humanitarian assistance and disaster response operations at San Isidro, Northern Samar, Senator Revilla Jr.
Refer to the Committee on Rules.
432, congratulating and recognizing the Philippine fencing team for their medal haul in the 2023 Southeast Asian Fencing Federation Championships held on January 5 to 13, 2022 in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Senator Revilla Jr.
Refer to the Committee on Rules.
433, congratulating and commending Filipino-American fashion designer and beauty queen Arboni Nola Gabriel for being crowned as the 71st Miss Universe, Senator Revilla Jr.
Refer to the Committee on Rules.
434, congratulating and recognizing Eco Philippines for winning the championship in Mobile Legends Bang Bang World Championship held on January 1 to 15, 2023 in Jakarta, Indonesia, Senator Revilla Jr.
Refer to the Committee on Rules.
435, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry on the implementation of existing government orders, issuances relative to the management of COVID-19 health-related waste disposal, Senator Villar M.
Refer to the Committees on Environment, Natural Resources and Climate Change, and Health and Demography.
436, congratulating and commending Cherry Ann Rondina and Philippine Army Sergeant Jovelyn Gonzaga and Florimel Rodriguez and Nenessa S. Lapor for winning the gold and silver medals respectively in the women's division of the Volleyball World Beach Pro Tour Futures held in Subic Bay, Zambales from 8 to 11 December 2022, Senator Cayetano, AP.
Refer to the Committee on Rules.
437, congratulating and commending esports athletes from ECHO and Blacklist International for finishing as champions and runners-up, respectively, in the Mobile Legends M4 World Championship held in Jakarta from 1 to 15 January 2023, Senator Cayetano, AP.
Refer to the Committee on Rules.
438, congratulating and commending the Ateneo de Manila University debate team, especially David Africa and Toby Leong, for participating and winning in the 2023 World Universities Debating Championship held on December 29, 2022 to January 3, 2023 in Madrid, Spain, Senator Villar C.
Refer to the Committee on Rules.
439, congratulating and commending the Philippines national fencing team for winning 8 gold medals, 7 silver medals, and 11 bronze medals, thereby emerging as the second overall champion of the 2023 Southeast Asian Fencing Federation Championship held on January 5 to 13, 2023 at Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Senator Villar C.
Refer to the Committee on Rules.
440, congratulating and commending the outstanding young men, TOYM 2022 awardees for the exemplary contribution to the country, Senator Angara.
Refer to the Committee on Rules.
441, commending Guinness title holder Sandy Menchi Abahan and Army Staff Sergeant Andrico S. Mahilum for emerging as champions in the Altitude OCR World Championships Mount Everest in the Himalayas held on November 8 to 2022, Senator Revilla Jr.
Refer to the Committee on Rules.
442, recognizing and honoring Senate President Pro Tempore Loren Legarda for being one of the 2022 ASEAN Biodiversity Heroes, Senator Revilla Jr.
Refer to the Committee on Rules.
443, directing the Senate Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations to conduct an inquiry on the anomalous procurement by the PAGCOR of its third-party auditor, Global Com RCJ, Senator Pimentel III.
Refer to the Committees on Accountability of Public Officers, Investigations, Games and Amusement.
444, urging the concerned government agencies to the Department of Foreign Affairs to expedite the submission of the respective certificates of concurrence in view of the country's ratification of the UNESCO 2005 Convention on the Protection and Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expression, Senator Legarda.
Refer to the Committee on Foreign Relations.
445, urging the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry into the surge in prices of onions and shortage in its supply, as well as factors hindering self-sufficiency, Senator Legarda.
Refer to the Committee on Agriculture, Food and Agrarian Reform.
446, congratulating and recognizing the under-22 national boxing team for their successful run in the 2023 ASBC Asian U2022 Boxing Championship held as January 17 to 26, 2023 in Bangkok, Thailand. Senator Revilla Jr.
Refer to the Committee on Rules.
447, commending Filipino surfer Rogelio Esquivel Jr. for being the champion in the World Surfing League La Union International Pro Longboard Qualifying Series held in San Juan, La Union. Senator Revilla Jr.
Refer to the Committee on Rules.
448, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry to revisit, re-examine, and review the existing bilateral agreement and standard employment contract governing OFWs in Kuwait with the end in view of establishing stricter policies, preventive measures, and applicable sanctions or ban in the deployment of OFWs in Kuwait. Senator Tulfo.
Referred to the Committees on Migrant Workers, Foreign Relations.
Fifth additional reference of business, resolutions. Proposed Senate Resolution number 449, congratulating and commending Filipino Paul Walter Ernest Jan Obiena for bagging the gold medal at the recently concluded Perch and in Point Roubaix, France. Senator Lapid.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
450, congratulating and commending Mapua University for winning the Philippines' first gold medal for digital readiness. From 2023, the Wharton School, U.S. Quarelis Simons Reimagined Education Award. Senator Lapid.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
451, congratulating and commending Filipina veteran actress Dolly Earnshaw de Leon for her multiple international awards and nomination for her work in the film Triangle of Sadness. Senator Lapid.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
452, directing the Senate Committee on Accountability and Public Officers and Investigations to conduct an inquiry on the questionable procurement by the PAGCOR of the third-party auditor Global from RCI to audit the gross gaming revenues of the POGOs duly licensed by the PAGCOR. Senator Gatchalian.
Referred to the Committees on Accountability of Public Officers, Investigations, Games, and Amusement.
453, congratulating Dolly De Leon for being the first Filipino actor to be nominated for the British Academy Film Awards and the Golden Globe Awards. Senator Ontiveros.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
454, directing the Senate Committee on Basic Education to conduct an inquiry on the status of the implementation of RA 10627, otherwise known as the Anti-Bullying Act of 2013, for the purpose of formulating and recommending policy and legislative interventions for its effective enforcement. Senator Gatchalian.
Referred to the Committee on Basic Education.
455, directing the Senate Committee on Basic Education to conduct an inquiry on the status of the implementation of the education provisions of RA 11054 or the Organic Law for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao and the Bangsamoro Education Code of 2021 for the purpose of addressing the low basic education net enrollment rate and poor learner outcomes and improving access to quality basic education in BARM. Senator Gatchalian.
Referred to the Committee on Basic Education.
456, urging the Executive Department to ratify the International Labor Organization Convention number 190 concerning the elimination of violence and harassment in the world of work. Senator Villanueva.
Referred to the Committee on Foreign Relations.
457, congratulating and commending Maria Luisa Varela for winning the Miss Planet International Pageant. Senator Villanueva.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
459, directing the appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry into the nickel and metallic mining activities in Sibuyan Island, Romblon, with the end in view of conserving the island's endemic flora and fauna, defining its coastal communities from long-term ecological devastation, and protecting the residents from the violent incursions of mining companies. Senator Ontiveros.
Referred to the Committee on Environment, Natural Resources, and Climate Change.
460, congratulating and commending the Philippine Para Chess team for winning the bronze medal in the first FIDE Chess Olympiad for people with disabilities held in Serbia. Senator Villanueva.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
461, congratulating and commending Ernest John E.J. Obiena for winning the gold medals at the Perch and Orin tournament in France and 2023 Orleans Cup in Poland. Senator Villanueva.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
462, directing the appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry on the alarming increase of pregnancies among 10 to 14-year-olds with the objective of taking a whole-of-government approach in developing a policy framework to prevent early childbearing and its negative consequences. Senator Angara.
Referred to the Committees on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality, Health and Demography.
463, raising the alarm on the reported Bukas Maleta incidents at the NAIA with the end in view of ensuring a secure baggage and passenger system in all Philippine airports. Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committee on Public Services.
464, congratulating and recognizing the Philippine team in the Asian Kickboxing Championships for their medal haul in Bangkok, Thailand, last December 10 to 18, 2022. Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
465, congratulating and recognizing Philippine Para Chess team for their impressive performance in the first FIDE Chess Olympiad for people with disabilities held in Belgrade, Serbia. Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
466, directing the appropriate committee of the Senate to undertake an inquiry on the status of the prize fund tax remitted by the PCSO to the Bureau of Internal Revenue. Senator Tulfo.
Referred to the Committees on Games and Amusement, Ways and Means.
467, requesting the Committee on Health and Demography to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation and reports of bullying in the hospital hierarchy affecting clerks, interns, residents, nurses, and other medical professionals, Senator Tulfo.
Referred to the Committee on Health and Demography.
468, expressing the profound sympathy and condolences of the Senate of the Philippines on the death of the former Minister of Trade and Industry Roberto Bobby Velayo Ongpin, Senator Marcos.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
469, expressing the profound sympathy and condolences of the Senate of the Philippines on the demise of national artist Dr. Angel C. Alcala, Senator Marcos.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, our Deputy Minority Leader would like to be recognized. I move that she be recognized.
Senator Risa
Ontiveros.
Ontiveros is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Madam President, dear colleagues, I rise on a point of inquiry. The question is on the status of Committee Report number 15. In relation to this, a brief manifestation. In December of last year, I was ready to sponsor this Committee Report number 15, or an act prohibiting discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. Pebrero na po ngayon, Madam President, at tinatanong na po sa akin ng mga miyembro ng LGBTQIA+ community kung ano na nga ba ang nangyari sa bill. Ngayong hapon din lamang, Madam President, pababa ko rito sa session, may kaka-email din lang pong muli. Itinatanong din, anyari na sa bill. Bakit daw hindi ko pa ito sinosponsor? They want to know what is happening. Madam President, I owe them an answer. And I owe them an answer in public, here in plenary. I've been made to understand that the good majority leader has obtained 19 signatures to remand the committee report to the Committee on Women because a number of pastors and bishops still want to speak. This was a couple of weeks ago. Today, I am still waiting for it to be remanded. And I have no illusions that the bill will sail through this chamber quickly. And I'm ready to defend it on the floor as a sponsor defends any bill with arguments and logic. What I was not ready for was for this bill to be in some kind of suspension or limbo. While I will always defer to the majority of our collegial body, perhaps some points need to be made for the historical record. Dahil tatalima po ako at meron din pong sasabihin. Firstly, while I believe in genuine participation and consultations, indeed, the evangelical groups participated actively in our committee hearing and in the technical working group. Ito po ang mga naimbitahan sa hearing at TWG at lumahok din po either sa hearing or sa TWG or sa pareho. United Church of Christ in the Philippines, National Council of Churches in the Philippines, Iglesia Filipina Independiente, Union Theological Seminary, Intercessors for the Philippines, Mindanao Evangelical Leaders Council, Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines, Philippine Council of Evangelical Churches, Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines, Jesus is Lord, Bible Values Movement, The Lord Who Cares Foundation, Living Waters Philippines, Simbahang Kristiyanong Lumad, Davao Region Evangelical Association Ministers, Philippines for Jesus Movement at Christian Coalition Movement. Maliban po dito ay ako po ay nakipag-dialogue sa Philippine Council of Evangelical Churches bago magpasko at sa aking pagtingin ay mabunga ang aming pinag-usapan. Secondly, and perhaps my dear colleagues also need to hear this in open session to allay any fears that none of the recommendations of the religious groups were accepted. I already agreed, Madam President, on a number of concessions. These include the explicit exemption of marriage licenses in the provision on licenses para malinaw na this is not a bill that legalizes gay marriages. The explicit inclusion of the principle of academic freedom and the non-disturbance of parental responsibility in the family code. And I agreed to reconsider criminal liabilities on schools that impose heteronormative uniform requirements and parents who seek medical tests to determine the SOGIESC of their children. And some of you, dear colleagues, have expressed concerns about these. Thirdly, I am willing, Madam President, to begin a conversation on trimming some of the criminal prohibitions. Mahalaga lang po sa akin na manatili ang pagbabawal sa 1. Workplace prohibition. Dahil ito po ay karapatan nating lahat bilang mga manggagawa. 2. Expulsion from schools on the basis of SOGI because this is not in accord with the best interest of the child. 3. Discrimination in access to emergency and necessary medical services because this is against the principles of the Universal Healthcare Law and basic humanity. 4. SOGI-based abuse against persons deprived of liberty. At 5. Discrimination in access to social protection instruments gaya ng ayuda. Fourthly, we have been listening to and hearing our religious groups for 23 years among all groups. I am willing to keep on engaging and listening in good faith, and I can engage with those who speak from a place of faith and religion, being a woman of faith myself, Madam President. But I was voted by the Republic to pass secular laws, laws that protect the least of us, laws that reflect our commitments to international law and to human rights norms. I hope you agree with me that the oppressions that visit our LGBTQIA+ community are real, documented, and undeniable. Huwag na sana nating ipagkait sa kanila ito. Yes, Madam President, we will revert the bill to committee as I submitted to our colleagues. And yes, we will hold another hearing if that is what you want, dear colleagues. But I ask this of each of you, my colleagues, if you still think that the oppressions against LGBTQIA+ people are imagined or exaggerated, reach out to a member of the community. Ask your staffer who is gay, your friend who is a lesbian, your family member who identifies as bisexual. Ask them about the aggressions and microaggressions they face each day. Our God is a God of love, of inclusion, of compassion, of lifting up those at the margins. In the words of Pope Francis, we are all children of God, and God loves us as we are, and for the strength that each of us fights for our dignity. When we pass measures that protect those that society casts aside, we do God's work. To my friends in the LGBTQIA+ community, I will continue to fight with and for you. Love is the currency of our struggle, and love always wins. Salamat po, Madam President. Salamat, Majority Leader.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Risa Ontiveros. Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President. Madam President, let me state our rules. We are governed by rules, and our rules says, Section 32, the rules of the Senate reads, when a report is returned to a committee or is transmitted to another, unless it is returned for purposes of conducting further committee hearings on new matters arising after the report, all previous proceedings in connection therewith shall be deemed to be void, and that matter in question shall revert to its original status, period, Madam President. Madam President, it has to be noted that after the Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality submitted the committee report number 15, December 6, 2022, letters from concerned religious groups were sent not only to this representation, Madam President.
Where's the letter from Anton?
If all this, Madam President, would not be enough, all these letters, Madam President,
Okay. Aside from emails. Aside from soft
I
copies.
can't even bring it here, Madam President, because it's too many. But what I'm saying, Madam President, is that it's not only me, Madam President, not just this representation that received this letter. So there are new matters arising after the report, after the first hearing. I have been bullied, crucified by some groups who are misled of the fact that there was only one hearing with this very controversial measure, Madam President. And that is why this representation had the chance to talk to our dear colleagues here in the Senate and ask what to do and consult them, Madam President, and gave them the options available for us. Now, the options that are available for us, Madam President, is not just to remand the committee report to the original committee, Madam President. If you look at the records, and just yesterday, Madam President, we did the same thing, we referred this to the Committee on Rules. Unfortunately, Madam President, yesterday, this representation had a quite a chat, Madam President, with our Deputy Minority Leader, and I told her, Madam President, about the predicament of some of our colleagues, specifically Senator Alan Cayetano. I told Senator Alan Cayetano about the situation, and he even asked me to just wait for a bit because he wanted to come up with a holistic approach in looking into this particular measure. He wanted to come up with a better version that would not just target, Madam President, one particular sector, but all sectors of the society. Let it be put on record, Madam President, that this representation is nothing against LGBT community. I'm so close to a lot of LGBTs, Madam President. My sister, the late mayor of Bukawi, Mayor Johnny Villanueva, is very close to the Secretary General of the national of LGBT national officer, Madam President. Now, if you would say, Madam President, that these groups were invited and given a chance to talk, again, Madam President, just one hearing. Just one hearing. Some of them are saying they were not consulted during the TWG. And so, again, Madam President, the aforesaid letters of the concerned stakeholders stated inter alia that they were not given the opportunity to really participate. And so, Madam President, 17, 18 members of this August chamber asked that they be given a chance to participate, that they be given a chance to be heard. And as mentioned earlier, Madam President, and we have been doing this in the Senate, as the minority leader would attest to this, we can refer this to the Committee on Rules for further study, as we have been doing in the past, Madam President.
The request and the answer of the Majority Leader is very clear. There is a proposal from the Majority Leader to refer the committee report to the Committee on Rules for further study, even if the committee report had secured enough signatures for it to be sponsored on the floor. But because of letters, hard and soft copy, opposition from several sectors received not only by the Majority Leader, but many of our distinguished colleagues and other groups, the Majority Leader, upon consultation with the Senate President and our colleagues, has decided to request the distinguished sponsor, Deputy Minority Leader, to discuss this in the Committee on Rules, having also in his possession a letter from our colleagues, 17 of them, requesting such. That is my understanding of the situation. Thank you. Senator Ontiveros is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, Madam President, Section 32, in the understanding of this representation, is not applicable to the status of the committee report. Because, as the good Majority Leader read it, when a report is returned to a committee or is transmitted to another, unless it is returned for purposes of conducting further public hearings on new matters arising after the report, and so on. But precisely, Madam President, and the Majority Leader himself just mentioned, that it will be returned to my committee, to the Committee on Women, precisely to conduct further public hearings. And as the good Majority Leader also mentioned, on new matters. He explicitly used that terminology just now, Madam President. So Section 32 does not apply, because what applies to the situation or the status of this committee report is in fact in the negative, in the phrase of this Section 32. And secondly, Madam President, originally, I understood that 19 of our colleagues signed the letter, which is in the possession of the Majority Leader. I learned today that it was actually 17 or 18, as the Majority Leader said. If it were 17, Madam President, then it would have been just the same number as signed the committee report. But I took it on faith that it was 19, as I was first informed, and therefore, Madam President, I submitted that the committee should hold another hearing. And I hold to that commitment, Madam Chair. The committee will hold a hearing, another hearing. Third point, Madam Chair, if a colleague, in this case, the good gentleman from Taguig and Pateros, wishes to present a comprehensive approach to the bill, wishes to improve it, wishes to make it better, then he was welcome at the hearing, and he will be welcome as well as any other colleague in the next hearing. And last but not the least at this point, Madam Chair, although I do not hear a formal motion yet from the good Majority Leader, I would object that this committee report be returned to the Rules Committee because even again, yes, of course, we must, each and every one of us, always return to our rules. In the first place, it was the Rules Committee that on first reading referred the bills, 3 bills, to the Committee on Women, which in Section 13 of our rules is described as such: women, children, family relations, and gender equality, 9 members. All matters relating to women, the welfare and protection of children, family relations, and equality before the law of women and men. So, though the Majority Leader has not yet stated it as a motion, just for the record, Madam Chair, if he so does, I would object. Lastly, Madam Chair, I accept the remanding to the Committee on Women, and I would reject the motion. If it is converted into a motion, I would reject or express my non-agreement with the request of the Majority Leader to remand that committee report to the Committee on Rules. For the record, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Ontiveros. I appreciate your logically enumerating the process. Having been Majority Leader myself in 2001, 21 years ago, I know our distinguished colleagues that Rule 10, Section 13 of the Rules of the Senate applies, and it says that all matters affecting the rules of the Senate, the calendar as well as the parliamentary rules, and the order and manner of transacting business and the creation of committees, that falls under the ambit. In short, it is a decision of the Majority Leader, however he wishes, with consultation with the minority and the majority. However, you had clearly stated that you wish that it be recommitted and or remanded to your committee which you chair, so that the requests of the sectors who allegedly were not consulted may be heard. I know that the process could be the recommitting to the Committee on Rules, after which the Committee on Rules will recommit it to the Committee on Women and Gender Equality, which Your Honor chairs. I want to confirm this with the Majority Leader so that as we decide now, and I as one of the authors and advocates as well of this bill, will be assured by the Majority Leader that when we recommit it to your committee, that it will not languish in your committee, but instead, after a thorough study on a certain timeline, it will be recommitted to the Committee on Women and Gender Equality so that further hearings may ensue. May I hear from the Majority Leader?
Thank you, Madam
Is
President.
this representation's understanding and appreciation of facts accurate? And we have the commitment that it will be eventually recommitted back to the committee of Senator Ontiveros.
May I just be allowed, Madam President, to comment, especially
Of course.
not only from the statements made by our
Yes,
Deputy
Majority
Leader,
Leader.
but also by our presiding officer, whom I highly respect. Madam President, you are correct. You have been Majority Leader, God knows how long.
I stated it, 2001.
Yes, wow, it's not too long ago, Madam President, and I appreciate, Madam President, your candidness in defending the Rules Committee, because kung hindi na po natin igagalang yung Rules Committee, para saan pa yung Majority Leader natin as the head of the Rules Committee. In Section 34 din po, Madam President, the motion for the study of any report submitted by the Committee on Rules shall always be in order. And while the report is pending consideration, no motion may be entertained unless it is a motion to adjourn. If this latter motion is disapproved, no dilatory motion on the aforesaid report shall be admitted. Madam President, we can debate as long as we want with this particular issue. The new matters arising after the committee report was submitted for sponsorship in this August chamber. I think it's been clearly stated and manifested, Madam President, that indeed we have to hold our horses and give chance to these groups, these sectors, to be heard. Now, Madam President, let me also state for the record and for the sake of the rules of this August chamber, it is not automatic that when we remand or when we do not allow the sponsorship to be undertaken here on the floor, it will be remanded to the committee on the original committee, Madam President. It's not a automatic, Madam President. That's why there's committee on rules. And when you made
may I-
mention,
may I, just so that it's clear.
when you made mention, Madam President, about the commitment of this representation, I can commit that I will hear it in the committee on rules. But it is not just this representation who will decide on whatever the committee on rules will do, Madam President.
Just to be clear, I don't think Senator Ontiveros stated that it is automatically remanded to her committee. That is the reason why the presiding officer had mentioned the rule that it is within the ambit of the Committee on Rules under Your Honor that would be responsible to hear it in the Committee on Rules.
I apologize,
Madam President,
I
if I may
apologize
interject
if it
at this
appears
point.
like that, Madam President. I apologize.
Madam
I wanted to
President,
clarify
But I
that.
just wanted to
Madam
tell
President.
the body that there are options here. And that's the reason why I spoke with her, Madam President. Because someone, a member of this August chamber, wanted to talk, wanted to say something, and that's why I spoke with her yesterday.
So it's very clear.
Madam President.
It will be recommitted to the Committee on Rules, and after studying it, it will be recommitted because the sponsor agrees
Who
to the
knows-
Committee on Women
Who
and
knows,
Gender
Madam
Equality.
President, if the Committee on Rules will agree and recommend that it
For
will
sponsorship.
be, it will be
Yes.
deliberated and be sponsored right away, Madam President.
You're correct.
That's what I'm saying, Madam President.
And you're referring to Section 34, which
Yes.
clearly says that the motion for the study of any report submitted by the Committee on Rules shall always be in order.
Yes.
I think that is what the Majority Leader is saying. However, we may this representation also ask Majority Leader, do you have an idea how long will it take? Because I'll be very candid here. It may take several months or a year, and perhaps that could be the concern of the good Deputy Minority Leader, that once it is referred back to the Committee on Rules, there is the slight possibility that it may not land back to her committee. So perhaps there could be some semblance of a commitment that there we want an open discussion in the most transparent way possible. And we want to hear any and all opposition to the measure. And so, while we grant the majority leader the right, which is under the rules of the Senate, to study it, may we know whether there is a commitment from the majority leader to either bring it on the floor for sponsorship or remand or recommit it to the committee of the good deputy minority leader. Is the majority leader listening? May I have a response?
Is that attributed to this representation?
I was
Madam
speaking to the
President?
majority
Yes,
leader.
Madam President,
Yes.
I have been talking to our experts here on the rules with the minority leader. Madam President, I cannot speak on behalf of the entire Rules Committee, Madam President. Whatever will be the decision of the Rules Committee, I would have to respect it, Madam President. And that's the main reason why I couldn't do anything about it, because I am still in coordination with some of the members, particularly Senator Alan Cayetano.
Yes.
So, I
can
just
we,
want-
before I recognize Senator Ontiveros again, may I know categorically, in clear terms, applying the rules of the Senate, what are the options available to the Rules Committee headed by the majority leader for this particular report? Number one,
Yeah, we wanted to study the matter,
Study?
Madam President.
Yes.
Some of our colleagues,
Okay.
including Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, made a suggestion yesterday that he wanted to come up with a holistic approach, not just pinpointing one specific sector when it comes to anti-discrimination, which I actually agree, Madam President. And of course, this has to get the approval and the concurrence of our dear colleagues. Number two, Madam President, we wanted to find out who else were not invited and who else wanted to
Clear.
speak their minds
Okay.
up, on this particular matter,
number
Madam
three,
President.
and number three, the possibility, once there's clarity, for
Yes.
it to be referred for sponsorship.
To return here on the floor,
Yes.
Madam President,
Yes.
and be sponsored
Or
again.
the fourth would be
Back
to
to the-
recommit.
to
So there are
recommit.
four options.
Yes, Madam
And
President.
it is never the intention of the good majority leader to just let it languish in your committee.
Of course not.
Of course not, yes. We want to hear
Madam
it.
President, let me
Yes.
put on record that the
Yes.
minority is a member of the Rules Committee.
Yes,
The two of
very
them,
clear.
Madam President.
Yes. Okay, having said that, it's very clear we have the four options, and if there are many other options, I will be happy to listen. In the meantime, we recognize the sponsor, Senator Ontiveros.
Salamat, Madam President. First of all, when the signatures of my dear colleagues, 19 of them, I was informed at first, and now it appears 17 or 18 of them, I was made aware of its existence. I told the good majority leader and even the Senate President in the sight and in the hearing of our dear colleagues that I submit to hold another hearing in the Committee on Women. I even remember clearly, Madam President, that the Senate President said, "Oh, so Risa, you'll hold another hearing." And I said yes. So I was given to understand that submitting to the wishes expressed in the letter of 19 or 17 or 18 of our colleagues, that the committee report would be remanded to the Committee on Women, and I would be able to schedule another hearing. I acted in good faith, Madam President, the same good faith that underlines our unequivocal upholding of the rules of the Senate. Secondly, Madam President, again, if any colleague wishes to present what he believes is a more comprehensive approach to a bill or to bills, in this case, 3 bills, Madam President, if he wishes to improve it, make it a better bill, then he was welcome to do so in the hearing, and he will be welcome again to do it in the next hearing. And third and lastly, Madam President, since in some of the most important moments of our lives, lumilingon tayo sa mga storya sa Biblia. Actually, Madam President, what I am thinking of and feeling here right now is like that story of when a baby was brought to King Solomon, pinag-aagawan ng dalawang babae. At yung isang babae, payag siya dun sa unang sinabi ni Haring Solomon na, sige, hatiin nyo na lang. Pero yung isang babae, hindi, gusto kong mabuhay yung anak ko. It is not an exact application to this situation, Madam President. Pero parang ang nangyayari ay pinupunit ang isang sanggol sa yakap sa kandungan ng kanyang ina. What other committee of the Senate has taken care of such bills as anti-discrimination and SOGI equality bill since more than 2 decades ago? 23 taon na po, Madam President. Isang henerasyon na po. And always, time and again, the Committee on Rules has referred it to this Committee on Women. And always, no matter how far or how short ang nilakbay ng bill o mga bills na ito, ay sinubaybayan, tinrabaho ng Committee on Women mula sa filing, hanggang sa pagdinig, hanggang sa technical working groups, hanggang sa sponsorship. Minsan, nung nakaraang kongreso ay umabot pa nga sa interpellation. Nabitin lang kasi naubusan tayo ng panahon na tapusing basahin ito. Kaya hindi ko po ma-imagine kung bakit, bagamat, gaya ng sinabi ko, tulad ng pag-submit ko dun sa pagkasabi sa akin, mas maraming bilang ng mga lagda ng ating mga kasama sa sulat kaysa sa lumagda sa committee report. Ako po'y nag-submit, Madam President, na didinigin ulit ng Committee on Women. At gaya ng sinabi ko, kung ano yung desisyon ng Senado batay sa ating mga rules, ako'y magsasubmit. Pero hindi ko talaga makita, siguro in letter lang ng rules, pero hindi ko makita sa spirit of our sacrosanct rules kung bakit hindi ire-remand sa Committee on Women, which was the understanding this representation was given by the Majority Leader, by the Senate President in our discussion. And if any of my colleagues would care to recall and either correct me or recall as I recall, hindi ko talaga makita, Madam President, yung faithfulness to the spirit of the rule in remanding it instead of to the Committee on Women na naging ina nitong panukalang batas sa loob ng 23 taon, hindi sa Committee on Women, kundi sa ibang komite, bagamat mataas na komite. For the record, Madam President, para masabi ko lang sa mga kasama natin sa LGBTQIA+ community that like them, I fight for this until the end, Madam Chair. Madam President.
Madam President, may I, Madam President, before we close this
Let me just
issue?
respond to Senator Ontiveros. I feel for you and for the LGBT+ community. I also understand and know the rules of the Senate. It is the prerogative of the Majority Leader to immediately recommit it or to hold a hearing for further study based on the request of some of our colleagues, or to recommend it for the special order for it to be sponsored. There are many possibilities. The rules of the Senate protect this, and it is clearly stated in the rules we have read into the record. And so my recommendation is, for all intents and purposes, your measure is in the Committee on Rules because it is in plenary. It is not hanging elsewhere. It is in the Committee on Rules. But the Majority Leader, in consultation with the majority in the committee, has decided to withhold the sponsorship, therefore not yet referring it for special order so that you are able to sponsor it, but instead restudy it with other members. I know you may not totally agree, but it is covered. I'm being very balanced and studying the rules. It is the prerogative of the Majority Leader. Your measure is in the Rules Committee. It is not just referred yet for special order for sponsorship. And the request and recommendation of the Majority Leader is for it. Actually, there's no need to recommit it to the Committee on Rules because it is already in the Committee on Rules. He simply, upon consultation with the members of the majority, wishes to hear it restudy it, and at such possible time to remand it. Although there have been instances when it is possible to immediately recommit it so that you can hear it immediately. That is what you wish. But then again, the majority leader is Senator Villanueva, not myself and not yourself. In another time, somewhere in time, perhaps you will be the majority leader and you would want to immediately deliver a speech or to remand something. We do not know. At this point, I can say that it is the call of the majority of the members of this chamber. May I hear first from the majority leader and then Senator Ontiveros again.
Thank you, Madam President. And I have been waiting for my chance also, Madam President, to address the body, especially after that alarming statements, Madam President. First, Madam President, the letter signed by our distinguished colleagues was signed January 23. So kahit po marami pa yung signed before January 23 dun sa committee report, it doesn't matter na po, Madam President, kasi nagbabasa naman po yung ating mga kasamaan dito. Alam naman po nila yung pinipirmahan nila. So hindi yung maganda, Madam President, na ito yung maging issue, Madam President. Pangalawa, Madam President, uulitin ko po dito po sa Section 34 ng ating rules dahil ito po ay governed by rules eh. Nakakalungkot po yung mga nambabash sa social media. Ilan lang naman po yun kasi marami ding LGBTQ na naiintindihan where we are coming from, Madam President. Pero yung iba na nang babash, akala nila walang rules. Akala po nila kung gusto ho ng isang senador o ng isang sector of our society na maging batas ang ninanais nila without going through the process, magiging batas ho. Madam President, hindi po usapin kung gaano katagal ang isang panukala para maging batas. Hindi po yun ang batayan. Madam President, napakatagal ko ho na naging legislator. Yung occupational safety and health standards, final ko po yun, congressman ako. It took me 18 years, Madam President. Naging senador ako bago naging batas. Muli, hindi po sa patagalan ang pagpasa ng batas. Madam President, ang Biblia po ay ipinapakita ng Diyos that God is a God of planning. Madam President, kaya po niyang i-create ang buong mundo, ang universe, sa isang salita. When God said, let there be light, and the light was, kaya po niyang gawin. Pero pinlano po niya eh. Pinakita niya po yung kahalagahan ng pagpaplano. Isang linggo po yun bago niya kinreate ang buong mundo, Madam President. So hindi naman ho siguro maganda, Madam President, na ikumpara itong panukalang batas na ito na pupunit tayo ng sanggol, Madam President. Hindi ho yun makadiyos, hindi rin po makatao, hindi rin po makatarungan na pumunit ng sanggol. Ang makatarungan po pag-aralang mabuti kung ano, what is best for that child, Madam President. Madam President, kung tunay nating gustong sabihin na ang ipinopromote natin ay pagmamahal, siguro mag-uusap po tayo. Dahil yun po yung dahilan bakit nandito tayo ngayon. Nag-uusap pa ho eh. Hindi ko kayang desisyonan yung desisyon ng lahat ng miyembro ng Senado, Madam President. And that's the main reason why I am consulting each one of them. Ngayon lamang, bago po ako pumunta sa podium na ito, kinonsulta ko si Senator Robin Padilla tungkol sa Muslim faith, especially when it comes to processes and respecting, Madam President, the offices, respecting the processes. So, Madam President, again, as I mentioned, and I think it's clearly mentioned and explained by our presiding officer, that indeed it is in our rules that we study further this particular measure and let the Committee on Rules report it out. Kung ano po yung gagawin natin dito, Madam President, as part of our rules in Section 34. Thank you, Madam President.
Maraming salamat, Majority Leader. Maliwanag yung ating mga binabasehan ng ating pag-uusap dito sa mga rules ng ating Senado. Naintindihan din natin ang hinaing at pakiramdam ni Senator Ontiveros dahil nga matagal na po ang panukalang batas ito, gaya din ng maraming panukalang batas na dekada-dekada na rin nandito. Maganda sigurong mag-usap ng muli ang minorya at ang mayorya para sa mabilis na pagdidinig ng panukalang batas na ito sa Committee on Rules para agarang mabigay ng muli sa Komite ng Women and Gender Equality. Senator Ontiveros.
With the ruling of the presiding officer and based on our rules, as before, Madam President, I submit. But for the record also, I object with every ounce of my being. Madam President,
I have not yet made an official ruling, although I
apologize,
have stated the
Madam
rule.
President.
But having said that, just so that it's very clear, there is it a motion, Majority Leader, that it does not need to be recommitted to Committee on Rules because it is with
Actually,
you.
Madam President,
Yes, it is still with you.
I did not intend to move at all, Madam President, as mentioned earlier, because I have been talking.
It's already with you.
Yes, it's with us, Madam President, but I am not moving yet, Madam President, until I finish talking to some of our colleagues who signed this manifesto, Madam President. But the Deputy Minority Leader made a statement a while ago, and that prompted this representation to again point to our rules that indeed the right thing to do is to refer it to the Committee on Rules. And so, Madam President, whether you want me to file a motion right now or still wait for the
No need.
I hope you understand, Madam President, where I'm coming from.
It is very clear that the measure is within your jurisdiction, Majority Leader. It is not languishing somewhere. It is within the jurisdiction of the Committee on Rules, not yet placed in special order for
Yes.
sponsorship. And therefore, the request of the Majority Leader is that it stay there and not yet be referred to special order because of a letter of 17 senators that came after the signature of 19 senators for the committee report. And so, do we have a commitment, Majority Leader, that hearings will be conducted that will lead to eventually a sponsorship of the measure?
The decision of the Rules Committee, Madam Chair.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
A single senator, even if you're
Madam-
majority,
yes,
they cannot
Madam President.
unilaterally decide on
Of course,
one
Madam
measure.
President, I hope
Yes.
that is clear because
Yes.
unfortunately, a lot of our viewers are sometimes not aware that the Rules Committee is not composed by this representation. Senator Risa and Senator Coco are both members of the Rules Committee,
Yes.
Madam President.
Liwanagin po natin na ang pinag-uusapang panukulong batas ay nasa Rules Committee at sinasaad lamang ng Majority Leader Senator Villanueva ang jurisdiction, ang sakop ng kanyang komite at ang nais ng maraming senador ay mag-conduct pa ng mga hearings at konsultasyon para mas handa para sa sponsorship at i-refer sa special order ang panukulong batas para ma-sponsor na ni Senator Ontiveros. Is my understanding correct, Majority Leader?
Yes, Mr. President. Madam President.
Senator Ontiveros?
salamat po, Madam President. I have said everything that I can say
Yes,
for the record.
we appreciate
Salamat po, Madam President.
your manifesting this on the floor. It is also an education for many of us, and we are not saying that this will never be heard, that the issues are not valid. No, the issues are very valid and very relevant and must be discussed, must be legislated. I know it's been so long. Just an example, the INIPAS law, 20 years, 30 years. Before I became senator in 98, there were only less than 13 protected areas. And fast forward after I became senator, but I did it in my second or third term when Senator Villar finally sponsored it, because it took us some time, maybe 3 decades. NIPA's law, I hope this does not take 3 decades, Senator Ontiveros, but I join you in your feelings and thoughts, and we value greatly the contributions to nationhood of our LGBTQ plus, I hope I'm saying it correctly, community.
Marami pong salamat, Madam President.
Salamat. Yes, Senator Coco Pimentel, Minority Leader, is recognized.
So, thank you, Madam President. I'm glad that we have this discussion, and it's apparent that this Senate wants to follow the rules of the Senate. We want to follow the rules by the book, parang ganon. So, Section 34 has been cited, and I think the motion here should be made by the Committee on Rules, not by an individual. Therefore, I think the Committee on Rules should meet and then tackle this particular issue, and then follow our rules. Who has the majority in the Committee on Rules? Yeah. Whatever motion is made there and prevails, then that is the report. Which will be reported out by the Committee on Rules, Madam President.
Thank you, Minority Leader. That simplifies, and that is exactly what the Majority Leader had said.
That's what I have been
that
saying, Madam
he
President.
wishes to further study it in the committee which has jurisdiction over the measure. Okay?
Yes, Madam President.
So very
And
clear.
so therefore, I move that it be referred to the Committee on Rules, Madam President.
There is a motion to study it further in the Committee on Rules. With no objection, the motion is carried. I see the hand raised of Senator Ontiveros. But the majority has it, so it's therefore for further study in the Committee on Rules. Thank you.
So after that, the minority is now expecting a schedule.
Yeah.
Yes.
For a meeting
Yes.
of the Committee on Rules.
Thank you.
Let us make it clear. There is no intention whatsoever to archive it or to let it languish in the committee.
Thank you, Madam President, for saying that. Baka kung ako magsabi, hindi maniwala, Madam President.
Kaya nga po, ako na po
Marami
ang
pong salamat,
sabi.
Madam President. But unfortunately, Madam President, a lot has been said and done, Madam President. There are a lot of things said against this representation which are not true, Madam President. And let it be placed on record, Madam President, that we are governed by rules and not just by one person, one senator here in this August chamber. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, at this juncture,
Yes.
Madam President, at this juncture, I move that we transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders, Committee Report number 24 on Senate Bill number 1850. This is the new Agrarian Emancipation Act. So moved, Madam President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Madam President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 1850 under Committee Report number 24. So moved, Madam President.
Any objection? Being none, motion is approved. Consideration of Senate Bill 1850 is now in order. With the permission of the body, the Secretary will read only the title of the bill without prejudice to inserting into the record the whole text thereof.
Senate Bill number 1850, an act emancipating agrarian reform beneficiaries from the debt burden arising from the award of agricultural lands under the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program and for other purposes.
Madam President, to sponsor the measure, may we recognize the distinguished lady from Las Piñas, Senator Cynthia Villar, as the chairperson of the Committee on Agriculture, Food, and Agrarian Reform, to deliver the sponsorship speech.
Senator Cynthia Villar, Chairman of the Agriculture Committee, is recognized.
Ms. President, my dear colleagues, I rise today to sponsor Senate Bill 1850 under Committee Report Number 24, or the new Agrarian Emancipation Act, which recommend the approval of the condonation of all loans, including interest, penalties, and surcharges due from such loans arising from the award of agricultural land. The Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program as of December 31, 2022, in substitution of Senate Bill number 55, authored by Senator Escudero, Senate Bill 178, authored by Senator Marcos, Senate Bill 922, authored by Senator Escudero, Senate Bill 1112, authored by Senator Marcos, Senate Bill 1179, authored by Senator Lapid, Senate Bill 1405, authored by Senator Revilla Jr., Senate Bill 1476, authored by Senator Villanueva, Senate Bill 1660, authored by Senator Marcos, Senate Bill 1661, authored by Senator Marcos, Senate Bill 1662, authored by Senator Marcos, and Senate Bill 1804, authored by Senator De La Rosa, taking into consideration House Bill number 6336. More than half of the Philippines' 113 million people live in rural areas, and 36% of them are poor and dependent on agriculture as their primary and often only source of income. According to the land reform history, from 1961 to 1965, President Diosdado Macapagal passed RA 3844, or the Agriculture Land Reform Code. From 1965 to 1986, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Issued PD 2, proclaiming the entire country as land reform area. From 1986 to 1992, President Corazon Aquino passed RA 6657, or the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law, EO 229, Series 1987, or providing the mechanism for the implementation of the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program, Proclamation number 131, instituting a comprehensive agrarian reform program. From 1992 to 1998, President Fidel Ramos passed RA 8532, an act strengthening further the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program. From 1998 to 2001, President Joseph Estrada issued EO 290 series of 2000, streamlining the structure and functions of the Department of Agrarian Reform and for other purposes. From 2001 to 2010, President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo passed RA 9700, the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program extension with reforms. And of course, from 2010 to 2016, President Benigno Aquino continued the comprehensive land reform, and in 2016 to 2022, it was President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. The PSA report also confirmed the glaring poverty gap between cities and rural areas. The Metro Manila region and urban centers have the lowest poverty incidence, 13%, which is higher among rural inhabitants, 36%. Although the causes of poverty in rural areas vary, common issues include a decline in agricultural productivity, unprofitable smallholder farming operation, and unsustainable practices. Rural areas lag in economic growth partly due to their lack of access to productive capital, financial services, and to limited market access. This emphasizes the need for urgent government action in this regard. Thus, the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program aims to improve the lives of small farmers by offering them land tenure security and support services. Many farmers who were beneficiaries of the Agrarian Reform Program have been waiting for their titles, but they have been saddled by issues on how to pay their loans, annual amortization, interest, including penalties and surcharges, which hinder their full ownership over their land. Without land in their name, and these farmers cannot access credit as they lack collateral to secure the same. This proposed measure seeks to emancipate ARBs from debt burden through the condonation of all unpaid principal and interest, including penalties or surcharges from these loans. This condonation bill shall cover two types of loans to agrarian reform beneficiaries. One is ARBs that have agrarian reform receivables account with the land bank and have not paid or have incomplete payments of their amortization on the principal, interest, penalties, and surcharges surcharges for their land under PD 27 RA 6657 and subsequent amendments to RA 665. This involves 409,000 hectares, 206.91 of agricultural land with 273,622 owners, debt amounting to 14,499,890,626.97 to be written off from the books of Land Bank. And number two, VLT-DPS or Voluntary Land Transfer Scheme and Direct Payment Scheme as provided by RA 6657, Section 20 and 21, for under which has 92,824 ARBs with a land area of 178,063.95 hectares, amounting to 199 million.61 to be paid from the Agrarian Reform Fund for a total of, as of today, 14.62 billion. Likewise, all cases related to the non-payment of loans of ARBs with the DAR shall be dismissed motu proprio, and that ARBs will be exempted from payment of estate tax. However, the 10-year prohibition in the bill is only a reiteration of the provision in RA 6657 that the land shall not be sold, transferred, or conveyed except through hereditary succession or to the government or to the Land Bank of the Philippines or to other qualified beneficiaries through the DAR from the issuance of the CLOA. This bill seeks to help alleviate the plight of ARBs who are farmers for them to recover and overcome the fallout of COVID-19 crisis, the devastating African swine fever, the ongoing avian influenza, the increasing cost of fertilizer, fuel, and other farm inputs, and climate change. Condoning their amortization will provide them the much-needed financial resources that should help them develop their farms, increase their productivity, and advance an agriculture-driven economy, improve the lives and that of their families, reduce poverty, accelerate rural development, and promote food security. Thus, I urge for the passage of this measure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Villar. We join you in this bill to benefit our agrarian reform beneficiaries and the long-suffering farmers in the Philippines. Thank you for this.
Madam President, before we continue, may I just be allowed to welcome here in this august chamber our pride, the National Philippine national athlete skateboarder, Margie Didal, Madam President. She's here with Mr. Carl Zambrano, the President of Skate Philippines, Madam President.
We
welcome you.
congratulate our very young Filipina once again and welcome she and her party to the Senate. At the same time, may I kindly request that this representation be made a co-author. A co-authorship form was transmitted a few months ago to the author of the measure on the condonation, and I have a co-sponsorship speech. Let it be inserted into the record since I cannot read it from here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And with that, Madam President,
Mr.
may I also
President,
put-
before you move on, can we which one should we finish first, the condonation or the acknowledging? I just wanted to make a quick statement.
Oh, I thought they have been acknowledged.
No, they
and-
have been, Your Honor, they have been, but I wanted to make a quick
Yes.
statement.
Okay, so Senator Villar is out of the podium now, and we once again recognize our young, excellent Filipina, and we recognize Senator Ontiveros, who wishes to make some statements relative to our
Cayetano,
guest
ma'am.
today.
Cayetano.
Ay, I'm sorry, Senator Cayetano. What did I say? Yes. Risa was on my mind.
Thank you, thank you,
Yes, Senator
thank you.
Cayetano. Pia.
Mr. President, Madam President, I just want to include in our acknowledgement the fact that Margie decided at a very young age to take on a sport that was very new. She did not even have an official coach at the time that she took up skateboarding. At what age? 12. At 12, and against the wishes of her parents, she was spending a lot of time on her skateboard, performing stunts. It took a while. It was very difficult for her to continue her passion because, like many athletes, even their own families worry for their future, worry for their safety when they embark on this, especially with skateboarding, which is very new and can be very dangerous. And in fact, she's here still recovering from an injury. Is it correct that you now have a titanium piece in your in her left ankle? Forever na ba yan doon? Okay. Wala naman daw forever yung titanium niya. But I'm saying that these are the risks that accompany the sport that she has chosen, and she has represented the country many times, and I want to say, represented the country very well. This young girl has a following internationally. Pag naabutan niyo yung live niya, yung mga Instagram live niya, parang within 1 minute, she has like hundreds of comments from her fans all over the world. And she represents us well with pride wherever she goes, not just with her sport, but in her demeanor, in her carrying the qualities of a Filipino na magaling pero humble, laging nakangiti. Even when she did not make it to the podium in the Olympics, she was cheering for her rivals. And so we are very proud to have Marjeline Didal with us. She is an honor to all the Filipinos. She brings honor to all of us, and her spirit as a young athlete shines in everything that she does. She's a Cebuana. Yun nga, if you look at the photos on her social media pages, talagang makikita mo na homegrown, kung ano lang yung meron doon, tinalon-talunan niya, may barkada lang siya doon, and then obviously from the start, she started to excel and make her own path, and now she is our shining star in the field of skateboarding, competing all over the world. And her next venture is in LA? Tama ba, LA? Hindi, pero saan ka magte-training coming soon? LA. So she'll be LA bound soon. Even while she's still recovering, going through therapy, she will already go there to compete. So this girl embodies the kind of discipline that I always speak of, the kind of discipline that I say we can find in athletes, the kind of pride in country that our athletes, especially those given the chance to compete for the country, carry with them in their hearts. So we're proud of you, Margie, and keep up the good work. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Senator Pia Cayetano. Once again, warmest congratulations for this exemplary Filipina, Margie Didal, national athlete, skateboarder, and Carl Zambrano, President, Skate Pilipinas. Congratulations. Salamat po. Welcome to the Senate.
Yes, we congratulate our dear athlete. And just to put on record, Madam President, I'm also part of the titanium alloy inside my right knee, having 3 knee major surgeries, Madam President. Just to put on record, I'm part of the club. Madam President,
Part of the club, skateboarder.
no, Madam President.
Skateboard.
Yung mga na-injured po, Madam President, yung
Ah,
na-operahan
part
yung
of the
tuhod.
injury, not part of
Yung
the,
nalagyan po ng
the sport.
lalagyan po ng titanium alloy yung tuhod, Madam President.
Okay. Thank you. I would also
Madam
like to
President.
welcome Mayor Marmichon of our upland municipality of San Remillo, of my lovely province where the mountains meet the sea.
Thank you, Madam President. At
Thank
this
you.
juncture, let me also put on record that Senators J.V. Ejercito and Senator Nancy Binay would also like to be co-author and co-sponsor of the measure. And
Which measure is this?
this what we're tackling, Madam President, the
condonation.
condonation, Madam President.
Yes. We, of course, Senator Binay, Senator J.V. Ejercito, we made co-authors of the bill on the dark condonation.
Yes, Madam President. Also, Senator Bongo would like his co-sponsorship speech be inserted also into the
Senator
records.
Bongo's sponsorship speech is inserted into the
Madam
record.
President, may I be allowed to co-sponsor the measure,
The
Madam President?
Majority Leader Senator Joel Villanueva is made co-sponsor of the DAR measure.
Madam President, may I co-sponsor the measure because this is my bill, Madam President.
Oh yes, not inserted into the record, but exclaimed during session. We
Madam-
recognize the Majority Leader Senator
Thank you,
Joel
Madam
Villanueva.
President. This will be very short, Madam President. Distinguished colleagues, it is this representation's honor and privilege to co-author and co-sponsor this landmark piece of. I would like to thank our dear colleague, our principal in the House, Honorable Senator from Las Piñas, Senator Cynthia Villar, ang ninang ng bayan, ninang po namin yan ni Gladys, for all her hard work on this particular measure, which is a priority measure of the President. Madam President, the emancipation of Filipino farmers from the bondage of tenancy has been a dream and a tale almost as old as our nation's history. From the encomienda system during the Spanish colonization, which evolved into the hacienda, shared tenancy, and the inability to fully reap the fruits of their hard-earned labor contributed to the abject poverty that has beset farmers for decades. Madam President, according to Philippine Statistics Authority, the agriculture sector posted the highest poverty incidence in 2018 at 31.6%. We are an agricultural country, Madam President, and we take pride in our local produce. And yet almost 1 in every 3 farmers is poor and barely getting by. To give you the full picture, Madam President, as of 2020, a quarter of 24.8% of the country's total employment is from the agriculture sector. And most of them are poor and disadvantaged. For example, Madam President, the distribution of agrarian reform beneficiaries is highest in Region 6, your region, Madam President, or the Western Visayas region, where there are a total of 341,293 ARBs recorded as of 2021. According to PSA, the poverty incidence among farmers in the region was a whopping 36.1%, Madam President, in 2015 and 26.2% in 2018. The second highest distribution is recorded in Region 12 or Soxargen, where there are about 301,198 ARBs, and the poverty incidence in the region is 52.6% in 2015, or 1 in every 2 farmers, and 40.1% in 2018. Madam President, this august body recognized the urgency of addressing the concerns of the agriculture sector. And we saw a tremendous increase in the budget for agriculture this 2023, thanks to our dear colleagues. This should translate to higher incomes of our farmers, increased productivity of the sector, improve competitiveness of our local producers, and higher supply and reduced costs of agri and food products for our people. Together with the passage of this bill on the condonation of ARB loans, we are on track in making a lasting and more meaningful impact on the agriculture sector. For indeed, Mr. President, it is this representation's belief that the emancipation of agrarian reform beneficiaries from the debt burden arising from the award of agricultural lands under the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program, or CARP, is necessary if we are to seriously address rural poverty and improve the lives of Filipino farmers. The Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program sought to achieve social justice, to empower landless farmers and farm workers through the equitable distribution of land and the provision of support services, and to uplift the lives of its farmer beneficiaries. The promised economic empowerment of ARBs has been impeded by low loan repayment rates, low productivity, increasing prices of farm inputs, and natural disasters, among others. As our farmers struggle to make both ends meet with their unjustly low earnings, it has become even more difficult for them to pay their agrarian loans. It is our hope, Mr. President, that this important measure will help end the cyclical and generational poverty among our ARBs. The condonation of a total of 57.557 billion pesos principal debt of 610,054 ARBs, tailing a total of 1.17 million hectares, shall emancipate them from debt burden and shall help them refocus their resources and energies instead of increasing their productivity and improving their lives. We hope, Mr. President, that the eventual and immediate passage of this measure shall usher in the revitalization and full modernization of our agriculture sector towards food security. Muli, Ginoong Pangulo, maraming salamat po. Maraming salamat kay Senator Cynthia Villar, and God bless us all.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure is the distinguished gentleman from Cavite and Davao Region, no other than Senator Bato de la Rosa. I move that he be recognized, Mr. President.
Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Majority Leader. Mr. President, I stand to co-sponsor Senate Bill number 1850 under Committee Report number 24, entitled An Act Emancipating Agrarian Reform Beneficiaries from the Debt Burden Arising from the Award of Agricultural Lands under the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program and for other purposes. Before anything else, I would like to commend the good chairperson of the Committee on Agriculture, whom we all fondly call Mama Bear, Senator Cynthia Villar, for speedily championing this measure. Most things except agriculture can wait. Words credited to Jawaharlal Nehru, India's first Prime Minister. And they ring true even today, Mr. President. Agriculture, which hangs on a delicate, almost mathematical balance of the elements, cannot be made to wait. Hindi maaaring ipagpaliban ng magsasaka ang panahon ng pagtanim, maging ang panahon ng pag-ani. There is a reason why food remains a basic need, and there can be no delay in fulfilling this need. Hindi tayo mabubuhay na walang pagkain. Ganyan kahalaga ang ginagampan ng papel ng ating mga magsasaka. Agriculture is and always will be an urgent matter. In recognition of its urgency, Mr. President, Republic Act number 6657 was enacted into law, otherwise known as the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law of 1988. This law aimed to uphold a just and equitable distribution of land to landless farmers, putting premium on their welfare. The vision of CARP was social justice. by providing our farmers and farm workers with opportunities to enhance their dignity and improve the quality of their lives through greater productivity of agricultural lands, while at the same time attaining authentic rural development industrialization. However, for today, Mr. President, let us take a look at Section 26 of the said law. Nakasaad sa nasabing seksyon na mga lupaing iginawad sa ating mga agrarian reform beneficiary ay babayaran nila. The total is divided across 30 annual amortizations at an interest rate of 6% per annum. Kung atin pong susuriin, maaari pong para sa ilan, maliit na halaga lang ang buwanang hulog na nagkahalaga sa karaniwan na 200 piso. Ngunit, para sa atin po mga magsasaka na ang tanging pinagkukuhanan ng kanilang kabuhayan ay ang kanilang mga pananim, ang buwanang hulog na ito ay sapat na pangkain ng kanilang pamilya, pampagamot sa tuwing may sakit at pampaaral sa kanilang mga anak. Bukod sa pangaraw-araw na gastos, nawawala rin ang pambayad ng ating magsasaka sa kanilang lupa sa tuwing sinasalanta ng bagyo ang kanilang mga pananim. Ang ilang buwang hirap sa pag-aalaga ng tanim at gastos sa mga binhi at pataba ay tila bula na nawawala. Sa tuwing dumarating ang bagyo sa kanilang taniman, nawala na ang pambayad ng lupa, nawala na rin po ang panggastos para sa kanilang pamilya. Sa maraming pagkakataon, napipilitan na lamang mangutang ang ating mga magsasaka. Sadly, Mr. President, this is probably the reason why in 2018, data from the Philippine Statistics Authority showed that poverty incidence of farmers was at roughly 31%. Marami sa ating mga magsasaka ay nanatiling mahirap. And yet, I speak today as one proud and grateful member of this Congress because under Senate Bill number 1850, we are now emancipating them from the clutches of these financial burdens. Mr. President, sa panahon na bumabangon pa lamang ang lahat mula sa bangungot ng COVID-19, lalong-lalo na ang ating mga farmers, hindi na natin dadagdagan ang kanilang mga hinaharap na pagsubok. Nito lamang hearing tungkol sa pagtaas ng presyo ng mga sibuyas. Nalaman natin na may ilang magsasaka na ang piniling magpakamatay dahil hirap na sila. How heartbreaking to know that the ones who work the hardest to ensure that we can eat and live are now the ones who give up on their lives. We say no more. We stand with our agriculture sector. It is time for Congress, this Congress, to look at our farmers, feel their hardships, and resolve once and for all that they do deserve better from their Senate. Agriculture, Mr. President, is urgent and it must not be made to wait. Let us see to it that Senate Bill number 1850 gets passed into law. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator De La Rosa, Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. And at this juncture, may I ask, Mr. President, that the co-sponsorship speech of Senator Jinggoy Estrada be inserted into the records.
The co-sponsorship speech of Senator Jingo Estrada is inserted into the records.
At this juncture, Mr. President, I move that we recognize the distinguished gentleman from Bicol and the Republic of the Philippines, no other than Senator Robin Hood Padilla.
Senator Robin Hood Padilla is recognized.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo at sa atin pong pinunong mayorya. Ako po ay tumitindig sa pulpito. A'udhu billahi minasyaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ako po ay nagpupugay unang-una sa tinatawag ko pong ina ng Senado, Senator Cynthia Villar, sapagkat alam niyo po, Ginoong Pangulo, sa loob po ng 7 buwan ko dito sa Senado, at ako po ay nagiging panauhin ng ating mahal na senadora sa kanyang mga pagdinig sa Komite ng Agrikultura, doon ko po nakita ang tunay na pagmamalasakit ng senadora sa ating mga magsasaka. At katunayan po ay tuwing pinanonood ko po siya, lagi ko pong sinasabi na sana habang buhay na po kayo dito sa Senado. Alam niyo po, mga mahal kong kababayan, ito pong napakagandang panukala na ito na Senate Bill number 1850, Committee Report number 24, ang New Agrarian Emancipation Act. Napakaganda po nun, napakinggan. Alam niyo po, katunayan, ito na po siguro ang pinakamagandang panukalang narinig ko dito sa Senado sa loob ng aking 7 buwan. Sapagkat ito po ay may kinalaman sa ating magsasaka. Bilang ako po ay tiga Bicol at tiga Nueva Ecija at ang aking pong mga ninuno ay galing pa sa Pangasinan, huwag niyo na pong tanungin ba't ang dami namin pinagmulan sapagkat napakarami pong padilya. Dahil sa maraming dahilan. Alam niyo po, ang ating pong magsasaka, tunay po ang sinabi ni Senator Villanueva at ni Senator Bato de la Rosa na kung meron pong hirap na sa panahon nito, ay yan pong ating mga magsasaka. Katunayan, ang karamihan po dyan ay ayaw ng turuan ang kanilang mga anak na magsaka dahil ano pang mahihita nila, wala namang future silang nakikita o kinabukasan. Ito pong panukala na ito, nadinig ko na po ang magagandang talumpati. Ang pakiusap ko lamang po, mahal na Ginoong Pangulo, sa ating mga kasama dito sa Senado, sana po ay maging kasing bilis ito na ang tinatawag nating SIM card registration. Sana po ganun kabilis ang pagpapatupad nito para maging batas. Sapagkat ito po ay talagang mararamdaman po ito ng ating mga magsasaka. Sa wakas, meron pong mararamdaman ang ating mga magsasaka. Kaya mahal na Ginoong Pangulo, inuulit ko po ang aking buong pusong pasasalamat. Kasama po ang mga magsasaka. Kami po ay nagpapasalamat sa ating pong mahal na ina ng Senadora Cynthia Villar sa panukala po na ito. At muli po, hinihiling ko sa aking mga kasama dito sa Senado na ito po ay maipasa kagad at maging batas. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo.
Salamat, Senator Robin Hood Padilla, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I join the distinguished gentleman's call that we put the gas on this particular measure as this is urgently needed by our farmers. Mr. President, at this juncture, and for the members of this August chamber to study further this particular measure, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1850 under Committee Report number 24. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, consideration of Senate Bill number 1850 under Committee Report number 34 is hereby suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move that we transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders, Committee Report number 21 on Senate Bill number 1841. Mr. President, this is the bill strengthening the conservation and protection of Philippine cultural heritage.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 1841 under Committee Report number 21.
Is there an objection? There being none, the motion is approved. Consideration of Senate Bill number 1841 is now in order. With the permission of the body, the Secretary will read only the title of the bill without prejudice to inserting into the record the whole text thereof. Mr. Secretary.
An act strengthening the conservation and protection of Philippine cultural heritage through cultural mapping, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 166, otherwise known as the National Cultural Heritage Act of 2009.
Majority Leader?
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we recognize our distinguished Senate President pro tempore, Senator Lauren Legarda, as chairperson of the Committee on Culture and the Arts, to deliver the sponsorship speech.
Our Senate President pro tempore, Senator Lauren Legarda, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Esteemed colleagues in the Senate, Committee on Culture and the Arts, advocates, our friends who've been recognized in the gallery today. The committee will now sponsor Committee Report 21 based on Senate Bill 1841. The bills relating to the proposed measure have been referred. I thank Senator Nancy Binay, Senator Ramon Revilla Jr., who are mentioned here as authors as well. I know that our other colleagues will have their co-sponsorship speeches. Mr. President, I stood here on our first session day this year on a matter of privilege, sounding the alarm for the climate. I wish to take this opportunity to reiterate that changing climate threatens our very way of life, including our heritage. It is for this reason we need changes in our heritage law, now almost 14 years old, to include what we missed and to address new threats from a fast-changing cultural landscape brought about by a digital tidal wave. And I do this in February, which is Arts Month. Since we passed Republic Act number 10066, or the National Cultural Heritage Act of 2009, I believe I co-sponsored and co-authored the measure, and Senator Sani Angara was the principal author in the House of Representatives. Yes, we have a good record of preserving important cultural properties, but still, we have lost quite a number of structures. The collective experience of its implementation has led the cultural agencies to protect, preserve, conserve, and promote the nation's cultural heritage, its property and histories, and the ethnicity of local communities, to establish and strengthen cultural institutions and protect cultural workers and ensure their professional development and well-being, to band together to seek the necessary changes we're asking for in this bill. To further strengthen heritage conservation in our country, this bill seeks to mandate local government units to conduct a cultural heritage mapping of their areas for both tangible and intangible and natural and built heritage. The proposed amendments aim to harmonize the relationships between the cultural agencies and update definitions and coverages, taking into consideration laws and regulations since the original law was enacted in 2009. The proposal aims to be more sensitive to intangible cultural heritage, including heritage in the performing arts, as well as audiovisual and broadcast heritage. The proposal also includes a provision that will protect visual sightlines. The reclassification of terminologies also includes the classification of intangible cultural heritage listed in the UNESCO Register as Grade 1 cultural properties. The same is true for properties listed in the UNESCO Memory of the World Register. The Film Development Council of the Philippines, as the agency mandated to administer the Philippine Film Archives under RA 9167 and Administrative Order 26, is made responsible for heritage in film and broadcast arts. The institutionalization of culture mapping is sought as a way to make heritage an inclusive tool for local and national development. In particular,
cultural mapping employs a grassroots approach that empowers local communities to identify and assign cultural values to properties, both intangible and tangible, built and movable, cultural and natural, that are important to them. The proposed amendments assign local government units as the lead in conducting comprehensive cultural mapping activities in the respective areas. Meanwhile, the National Commission on Culture and the Arts, the NCCA, together with other culture agencies, are mandated to provide technical and financial assistance to LGUs to comply with the cultural mapping mandate. In addition to tangible cultural properties, the following are also considered as covered by cultural mapping mandate. A, heritage crops, products, technologies, agricultural heritage systems, food sources, and natural and non-traditional fibers. B, natural heritage sites, including national parks, habitats of endemic species, unique biodiversity, and cultural landscapes. C, natural dyes, traditional textiles and apparel materials, designs, techniques, processes, and machines. D, traditional medical practices and medicinal formulations. And E, indigenous knowledge systems, skills, and practices. NCCA's experience in working with local government units show the importance of a participatory approach in cultural preservation as a way to address issues on community consent and feedback that often comes from a centralized, outside-looking-in perspective in heritage management. The Philippine Registry of Cultural Properties was earlier mandated under Section 14 of the National Cultural Heritage Act. This is operationalized at the local level by the submission of local cultural inventories by LGUs. Based on an agreement between the NCCA and DILG, the submission of LCIs is now included in the criteria to qualify for the seal of local good governance. As of December 22, 980 of the 1,715 LGUs have complied with the submission of LCIs. The total number of properties registered with the pre-CUP, including those registered by the cultural agencies, is 10,385. On November 25, 2022, I'm happy to note the province of Antique, my home province, which I represented for 3 years during the pandemic, completed its culture mapping. It was done in partnership with the NCCA, University of the Philippines, Visayas, and the Department of Education. Culture and history experts are teachers of our dear province who hailed from various elementary and secondary schools of the municipalities of Antique as culture mappers. And this representation was a member then of the House of Representatives. Nakakatuwa po. Can I have a copy of my hard copy, patakbo, sa kwarto sa taas? Just one copy. Nakakatuwa po, nung naka-lockdown po tayo sa panahon ng pandemya, Zoom po ako ng Zoom. Dahil natuto po ako mag-Zoom. Low-tech me, naturuan ng Zoom, wala pong ubos ang aking creativity at ang boses at pinagagawa. Napaka-excited po akong natuto ako mag-Zoom, kaya po zinuzoom ko ang mga magsasaka, ang mga fisher folks, ang mga teachers, ang mga katutubo, ang mga mayors, ang mga kapitan, lahat po dahil po sa lockdown. At naging matagumpay po ang ating pagzo-Zoom. Kasama po ang UP Visayas na nagtsaga po sa aking kakulitan at trinain po ang ating mga guro na maging culture mappers. Kaya sa panahon ng pandemya, this is a mental health issue as well. Naging prolific at creative po at imbis po tayo'y malungkot at malugmok sa frustration at hirap, ay ang dami po nilang homework ng 3 taon na 21 hard copy books po na pinapatakbo ko sa taas. I hope aabot. The 21-volume compendium record Antique's rich heritage and significant research material. I know the city of San Juan has this and may do it. The province of Bulacan, how interesting. If Bukawe can have a culture mapping. Nung bata po ako, naalala ko, basaan, nung Hulyo, sumasakay ako ng bangkang malaki sa tiyuhing kong taga Bulacan. Sa Cagayan de Oro at Misamis Oriental, sigurado ako, meron namang culture mapping at magandang magsagawa. Sa Capiz, ren, magandang gumawa. At siyempre, sa iba't ibang lugar, lalo na sa autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao. So this proposed amendment also includes stipulations on compliance with the Data Privacy Act of 2012, as well as a requirement for prior consultation with indigenous cultural communities. Mahalaga po na meron tayong paalam sa ICC. Kasama ko po ang isang Gamaba awardee sa letratong yan, si Mr. Caballero, na kumanta dito at nag-perform nung aking una at pangalawang termino na siguro wala po kayong lahat nung 1998. Meron ba akong kasama nun? O nung 2004. Yan po si Mr. Caballero at ang mga taga-Kalinog, Iloilo na Panay Bukidnon na Indigenous Peoples Group na nag-perform po dito. Sana'y maimitahan ko ng muli. At isa po sila sa higit sa 100 mga IP groups na siyang hinihingan natin ng FPIC. Napakahalaga, free, prior, and informed consent. Pag tayo po'y sumusuot ng iba't ibang gamit na disenyo po nila, ay sana po yung mga gumagawa ay pinaalam. Alam natin, pero ibang issue po ito na ibang mga bansa ay nagnanakaw na lang ng intellectual property at disenyo ng ating mga katutubo. But that's a different matter altogether. Cultural heritage value is bestowed by society. Hence, it is a decision that is attended by agreement. Yan naman po ay sa Cordillera sa Ifugao. Nagbumaba po ako sa Bangaan yata, yung aking binabaan noon, higit sa 10 taon na nakaraan, isa po sa mga elders po ng Ifugao Indigenous Peoples Group. So, we need a level of consensus as well to how a society values itself and the shared experiences that make our society a cohesive one. These values include historical accounts that connect us with our shared past and provide continuity, symbolic value that lends power and meaning to our identity, spiritual value that gives sanctity and transcendence, aesthetic value for simple pleasure and inspiration, and social value that makes us a cohesive whole, promotes connectedness to reduce conflict and tension. I really believe, Mr. President, if we know our culture well, both natural and built, movable, tangible and intangible, I believe that there will be less tension and conflict. We may be different, but it is our differences that binds us as a people and as a nation. So, for these reasons, I propose that heritage values, including intangible cultural property and natural heritage, must be held up for greater public appreciation and collective concurrence. Duna kinaiya kag para nubliyon. A cultural inventory of the province of Antique, significant intangible cultural heritage, Volume 1. Pasensya na po, hindi ko po kayang dalin ang 21 na mga aklat sa aking tanggapan, pero susubukan ko pong mag-upload ng soft copy. Hindi ko lang alam kung kaya lahat ng UP Visayas to i-upload. So, what do we have to do? We have to ensure that these resources are accessible. Na hindi lang tayo po ang nagkakaintindihan po dito. Na baka naman iba sa atin, sabi, ano pinagkasabi pa ng senador na itong pinaka-senior dito sa cultural heritage? At para makita ng lahat ang diferensya ng built at saka ng movable at ng natural at ng intangible at tangible, hindi ba? Yung kinain nating pansit o yung ating tinatanim na halaman o yung ating medicinal herb o yung kantang narinig natin sa radyo, sa transistor radio o yung gong na plinay sa isang lugar. Lahat yan ay may ibig sabihin, pati yung ating sulat. Tignan po nyo sa aking tanggapan. Nung bumisita si Senator Robin Hood at si Senator Raffy Tulfo, tinanong, ano ba yung script yan ay baybayin? At bisitahin natin ang Baybayin Gallery sa National Museum. Ilan lang po yan sa mga parte ng ating intangible heritage. Dahil nga intangible, hindi po mahawakan, hindi makita, pero parte po ng ating kaalaman. So, we must make all of this accessible, shared. Gusto ko sana, dahil hindi naman ako maalam sa vlogging, yung mga may 25 million ditong followers, gaya ni Senator Tulfo at yung million-million ni Senator Robin Hood, ay sana mapag-usapan ito at ilabas po natin ang kahalagahan ng abaka, gaya ng yung tinalak pong nakasuot sa aking katawan po ngayon at marami pang iba. So it's not just beauty. It is more than just beauty and inspiration. It is a deeper meaning of the processes that goes with it, of the thoughts, of the history, of the knowledge. So we must preserve it to undertake wide-scale culture mapping. And who knows, we will realize that we are the wealthiest nation in Asia and in the world. And I believe we are one of. Hindi man tayo may archaeological sites gaya ng Ehipto. Hindi man tayo gaya ng New York City o Paris na madalas puntahan ng ating mga Pilipinong gustong mag-tour. Pero ang yaman po ng ating intangible at tangible heritage ay hihigit pa sa maraming kultura. This bill aims to allow multiple agencies to bring this about, especially when threatened by climate change and biodiversity loss. Our heritage values must be protected as a source of our connectedness and resilience to help us get through the direst times in unison, using the best available means that promote our interrelation. Cultural values are not fluff. I will be offended if they say arts and culture is fluff. No, cultural values is who we are as a people. We are not luxury. No, we are grassroots, community-based, community-driven. They are definitely not soft. Sabi, soft issues. Naku, hindi po. Malalim po ito. Nor are they the first to be sacrificed in the first of trial. That's why I tried to prove that during times of trial like the pandemic, we were able to come up with something productive like the cultural mapping. Kasi po, ang ginagawa ng iba sa gobyerno, pag merong trials ang ating bansa, ang unang titigbakin, yan, sinagong salitang ginamit ko, o tatanggalin, yung mga soft, yung mga fluff, yung ganito, yung ganyan, sa NCCA, sa KWF, o sa NHCP, hindi po yun fluff, hindi po yun, yan po ay parte ng ating pagkatao. So they are in fact our bridge to each other and to the other side of these twin crises. What are these twin crises? You know me so well, and you know this so well, Mr. President. Climate and biodiversity loss, and our sustainable pandemic recovery. And so, I might be boring you. I'm grateful to you for listening, and I can hear a pin drop. Those who opted to listen to me face to face instead of eating merienda, thank you po. But I'm certain those who are not here feel the same way, and I am grateful to those who co-authored the measure, will co-sponsor the measure, and even without co-sponsorship and co-authorship, your support will go a long way in trying to bridge the gap among the 108 million Filipinos in the whole archipelago of 30 million hectares and beyond. We are the ties that bind. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Lauren Legarda. And likewise, before, we'd like to commend you for always upholding and promoting culture and history and being consistent. Unfortunately, in our country, not all officials really promote history. Wala kasing boto makukuha rito. But Senator Lauren has always been consistent with this because our pride in patriotism and love for country is based on our culture and heritage. So, thank you, Senator Lauren Legarda, our Senate President Pro Tempore. Majority Leader.
I will just repeat to her, Mr. President, what you mentioned. But again, we commend our dear chairperson, and we consider not just the legend of this institution, but also a dear Tita Ganda for continuously mentoring senators, including this representation, Mr. President. Mr. President,
I apologize to the presiding officer for only half hearing what he said because Senator Gatchalian, the chairman of education, had reminded me that it was like second nature to me. And I wanted to thank him as well because this committee is a new committee that is historic in this chamber that we created under your leadership, Mr. President, the Committee on Culture and the Arts. And thank you to Senator Gatchalian for recommending that it be made a solo standing committee. I owe it to the chair of the Education Committee for seeing the importance. And of course, the majority leader had proposed this as well. Thank you, Mr. President, to the leadership of this chamber.
Thank you, Senator Lauren Legarda,
thank
Majority
you.
Leader.
Mr. President, this juncture move that we recognize the distinguished lady from Makati City, no other than Senator Nancy Binay, to co-sponsor the measure.
Our lady from Makati City and soon to be is recognized, Senator Nancy Binay.
Ginoong Pangulo, tayo ngayon ay tumitindig para ipanukala ang report ng committee tungkol sa pagtaguyod ng cultural mapping sa bansa. As Filipinos and as lawmakers, the value of our heritage and culture must not be lost on us. Wika nga, ang bayang nakakalimot ay bayang naliligaw. Tuwing may pagkakataon tayong umikot sa buong bansa, ating personal na nakikita at nasasaksihan ang ganda, husay at mga nakamamanghang mga tangible at intangible cultural assets natin. Ngunit ang malungkot na katotohanan, naging mga piping saksi rin tayo sa pagkawasak at paglaho ng mga ito dahil sa kawalan ng tamang kaalaman at impormasyon. Mabisang proteksyon at sistema at kakulangan ng kamalayan upang pangalagaan ang mga ito. Bilang mambabatas, minarapat nating bigyan ng maayos na sistema ang pangangalaga, pagpapanatili at pagpapaunlad sa ating mga yamang kultura. Dito pumapasok ang cultural mapping upang mas bigyan natin ng mas komprehensibong pagtukoy at pagrepaso ng ating mga natitirang yamang kultura. Sa pag-amenda ng Republic Act No. 10066 o ang National Cultural Heritage Act of 2009, mas pinalawak natin ang saklaw ng batas at ating binigyang pagtuon ang pagsalba ng mga ito sa pamamagitan ng komprehensibo at sistematikong pag-iimbentaryo at pagmamapa. Layon ng inamendahang National Cultural Heritage Act na gawing mahalagang katuwang ang mga lokal na pamahalaan sa patuloy na pag-update ng Philippine Registry of Cultural Property. Sa nasabing amyenda, minamandato ng batas ang mga lokal na pamahalaan na magsagawa ng cultural heritage mapping ng tangible, intangible, natural, at built heritage sa kanilang mga komunidad. Kasama po ito sa mga ipinanukala ko sa Senate Bill No. 117 na inihain ko at nagpapasalamat po tayo sa chairman ng committee, ang ating Senate Pro Tem Lauren Legarda sa pagkonsidera nito. Bukod pa rito, kikilalanin rin ang karapatan ng ating mga indigenous peoples na magsagawa ng kanilang sariling cultural mapping. Sa pamamagitan naman ng cultural mapping, Research and Planning Division na itatatag sa ilalim ng National Commission for Culture and the Arts, ng Joint Congressional Oversight Committee at ng iba pang ahensya, matitiyak na ang bawat antas ng pamahalaan ay kumikilos upang mapanatili at maprotektahan ang mga yaman ng ating lahi. My esteemed colleagues, if we are to effectively conserve and protect our tangible and intangible, natural and built heritage, which are all critical aspects of our culture and identity, we need to have a systematic and comprehensive way of identifying our treasures. We hope to be able to do just that through this proposed measure. As is often said, knowledge is power. By knowing what we have, what we lack, what we can replicate, and what needs to be done, we have the power to change, develop, and make these treasures available for our people now, rather than a mere memory that can be forgotten. Through this measure, we ensure that the heritage that grounds us remain as guideposts amid the ever-shifting sands. Ngayong Pebrero po ay itinatanghal natin ang pambansang buwan ng sining. Napapanahon po at simbolikong pagpapahayag ang pagpasa natin ng Cultural Mapping Bill sa buwang ito upang mabigyang diin ang halaga ng mga pamana ng ating lahi. I hope for your support on this bill. Muli, maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Senator Nancy Binay, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this juncture, I move that we recognize our distinguished colleague from the Bicol region in the Republic of the Philippines, no other than Senator Robin Hood Padilla.
Senator Robin Hood Padilla is recognized.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo at sa ating pinunong mayorya. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ako po ay muling tumatayo sa pulpito na ito at upang una po, ako po ay bumabati sa ina ng kalikasan, Senator Lauren Legarda, sa napakaganda po niyang talumpati. Katunayan, hindi po sana ako nagbabalak magsalita dito pero nadinig ko yung aking pangalan at siya po ay nagsalita na nasambit po niya na i-post ko na gumawa ako ng paraan upang ang kanyang mga iminumungkahi at ang kanyang mga panukala ay mailagay po sa ating official account. Gusto ko pong ipaalam sa ating ina ng kalikasan at ating pong mahal na Senadora Lauren Legarda na matagal ko na pong inire-repost ang inyo pong mga post sapagkat naniniwala po ako sa inyong mga advokasya. Naniniwala po ako sa lahat ng inyong sinabi na katunayan tayo po ay ang pinakamayaman na bansa kapag pinag-usapan po natin ang ating kultura. Yan po ay may malaking katotohanan. Sapagkat tayo po ay tayo po'y bumalik pa ng mas malayo pa sapagkat pinag-usapan ng Austronesian languages. Sa atin po nag-umpisa yan. Dito lahat sila nag-embark sa atin palabas ng Asya. At diyan po makikita sa mga katulad po ng sinabi ng ating mahal na senadora sa mga weave na ginagawa, sa mga habi na ginagawa ng ating mga katutubo. Diyan po makikita talaga kung gaano kayaman. Katunayan na mariresolba natin ang mga problema ng bayan, katulad po nung pinag-usapan namin ng tagapagtanggol ng kababaihan, Senadora Risa Hontiveros, pinag-usapan po namin kung paano masusolusyonan yung mga maagang pagbubuntis ng mga kabataan. Ito po ay kung babalikan natin ang kultura natin talaga at isasabuhay ng ating mga kabataan ang kanilang kultura at tradisyon at malalaman po nila kung sino talaga sila hindi po tayo aabot sa ganyang klase ng moralidad. Katunayan, ng ating pong morality, isa po yan sa ipinagmamalaki na kultura ng ating lahi. Yan po ang kahalagahan nitoong panukala na ito. Hindi lamang po sa usapin ng sining, kundi sa usapin ng kultura, yung ating mga paniniwala, yung pagiging konserbatibo. Yun po ang paniniwala ko na kapag ito pong an act strengthening the conservation and protection of Philippine cultural heritage through cultural mapping, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 10066, otherwise known as the National Cultural Heritage Act of 2009. Ito po ang daan natin upang tayo po ay tunay na makarating sa nais nating patutunguhan. Katunayan, ito po ang sinabi ng ating pambansang bayani. Napakaganda po nitong kanyang binanggit. English nga lang po ito. He who does not know how to look back at where he came from will never get to his destination. Napakalinaw po nito. Paalala sa ating lahat na dapat po nating pagyamanin kung saan tayo nag-umpisa. Mahirap pong sabihin na ako'y Pilipino, pero pag tinanong mo naman, ano bang klase ang pagka-Pilipino mo, ay hindi niya po alam kung paano niya sasagutin. Kaya, Ginoong Pangulo, ang inihingi ko po uli, dahil ito yata ang pinakamagandang session na nangyari dito sa loob ng aking pamamalagi, na 2 panukalang batas ang may kinalaman sa ating mga kababayan. Unang-una, magsasanga. Pangalawa naman ngayon, sa ating kultura. Kaya po, Ginoong Pangulo, I love you very much. Thank you very much.
Maraming salamat, Senator Robin Hood Padilla. Mahal ka rin namin. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, Senators Revilla, Estrada, and this representation would just like to insert into the records our co-sponsorship speech, and I want it to be manifested on the floor, Mr. President.
The co-sponsorship speeches of Senators Revilla, Estrada, and the Majority Leader is inserted into the records.
Also, Mr. President, Senators Villar and Senators Cynthia Villar and Robin Hood Padilla would like to be made co-authors of the cultural mapping bill. So move, Mr. President.
If there's no objections, the Senators Robin Hood Padilla and Senators Cynthia Villar are made co-authors of the measure.
Thank you. Mr. President, last but not the least, to co-sponsor the measure is our distinguished colleague from the city of Taguig and Pateros, no other than Senator Pia Cayetano. I move that she be recognized, Mr. President.
Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, just a short sponsorship speech to support this measure. The 1987 Constitution provides that all the country's artistic and historic wealth constitute the cultural treasures of the nation and shall be protected by the state, which may regulate its disposition. Article 14, Section 16. Article 14, Section 15 further states that the state shall conserve, promote, and popularize the nation's historical and cultural heritage and resources as well as artistic creations. Culture is an integral component of the United Nations Sustainable Development Agenda, as it can be a driver and an enabler of the economic, social, and environmental dimension of sustainable development. According to UNESCO, the safeguarding and promotion of culture contribute directly to many of the SDGs, namely SDG 5, gender equality, SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, SDG 10, on reduced inequalities, SDG 11 on sustainable cities and communities, making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable are part of the SDGs. In fact, Target 11.4 calls for strengthening efforts to protect and safeguard the world's cultural and natural heritage. UNESCO has emphasized that culture should be regarded as the set of distinctive spiritual, material, intellectual, and emotional features of society or a social group, and that it encompasses, in addition to art and literature, lifestyles, ways of living together, value systems, traditions, and beliefs. Your Honor, it is high time that we pass this measure. It will be recalled that our law, the National Cultural Heritage Act of 2009, already requires the protection of the visual sightlines, core and buffer zones of a cultural property. It states that there shall be consultation with cultural communities there shall be consultation with cultural communities or indigenous people before properties that belong to them are included in the registry. And to that extent, Mr. President, the new law will further strengthen the constitutional provisions and the United Nations Sustainable Development Agenda, of which we are supportive of. I'd like to point out, Your Honor, that for the last few years, when this representation chaired the Committee on Education and the cultural agencies, we coordinated with NCCA and worked with various local governments to have training sessions to empower the local governments to start the process of cultural mapping. We actually did a 5-day training program in Taguig in 2018, which we did with the members of the community, and this was actually very successful. So we hope that we will be able to replicate this in many parts of the country, as this is actually mandated by existing law. And the current bill that we are tackling simply strengthens this measure that is already available to us, but we are always supportive when we are giving more teeth to the laws that we want to see manifest and come full circle, Your Honor. So on this note, this is our obligation to the future generation. We share a common future with them. We need to ensure that we preserve our identity as a country and as a people. We must prepare everyone for whatever the future is before us. And this includes preserving our culture and traditions and being able to register them so that we do have a record of all of this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator P. Cayetano. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move at this juncture so that our distinguished colleagues would have time to study further the measure. I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1841 under Committee Report number 21.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the additional reference of business.
The Secretary is directed to read the additional reference of business.
6 additional reference of business resolutions. Resolution of both Houses number 3 proposing amendments to economic provisions, specifically sections 2, 3, 7, 10, and 11 of Article 12, Section 4, Paragraph 2 of Article 14, and Section 11, Paragraph 1 and 2 of Article 16 of the 1987 Constitution. Senator Padilla.
Referred to the Committee on Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes.
Proposed Senate Resolution number 470, directing the Senate Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies to conduct an inquiry into the proliferation of bank-related scams and frauds resulting in loss of billions of Philippine pesos and adverse impacts on senior citizens. Senator Ontiveros.
Referred to the Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies, and Social Justice, Welfare, and Rural Development.
471, congratulating and commending Julie Uychiat for being the first Filipina to finish the World Marathon Challenge, winning 4 of the 7 marathons in its 2023 edition. Senator Villanueva.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
472, directing the Senate Committee on Tourism to examine the creation of policy reforms and budgetary expenditures to develop the Philippines' potential to be the leading country in the world for sustainable nature-based tourism. Senator Angara.
Referred to the Committee on Tourism. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, some admin matters, and with the consent of the body, pursuant to Section 18 of the Rules of the Senate and with the conformity of the Chairperson of the Committee on Tourism, Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy Binay, may I just manifest for the record the creation of a subcommittee on the following measures with Senator Sani Angara as subcommittee chairperson. Senate Bill number 238, Northern Antique Protected Seascape and Landscape Act of 2022. Senate Bill number 1166, the Pag-asa Island Ecotourism Cluster and Protected Area. Senate Bill number 1615, recognizing Baler Aurora as the birthplace of Philippine surfing. Senate Resolution number 472, resolution directing the Senate Committee on Tourism to examine the creation of policy reforms and budgetary expenditures to develop the Philippines' potential to be the leading country in the world for sustainable nature-based tourism. I so manifest, Mr. President.
Manifestation is noted.
Mr. President, at this juncture, may I manifest for the record that in relation to proposed Senate Resolution number 466, this is a resolution directing the appropriate committee of the Senate to undertake an inquiry in aid of legislation on the status of the prize fund tax remitted by the Philippine Charity Sweepstakes Office, or PCSO, to the Bureau of Internal Revenue. I am in the receipt of a letter, Mr. President, from the chairperson of the Committee on Games and Amusement, Senator Manuel Lito Lapid, authorizing Senator Raffy Tulfo, Vice Chairperson of the Committee on Games and Amusement, to preside over meetings, conduct technical working groups, prepare committee reports, sponsor the same before the plenary, and perform all tasks necessary to complete the legislative process. I so manifest, Mr. President.
Manifestation is noted.
Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, February 13, 2023. So move, Mr. President.
Is there objection? There being none, session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, February 13, 2023.